What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So unless you've been living under a rock, you've all heard by now about the tragic incident that took place regarding the missing woman named Sarah Everard. Now, first I want to say my thoughts and prayers to her family and friends, as this is a horrible event that took place. What took place after, or shall I say now, because the case is still ongoing, if this was in any other period of time, it would actually boggle the mind. But in truth, I'm not even totally surprised anymore about what's taking place, because thousands of women, and a good few men I have to add, were tweeting their disdain for the whole gender of men, and it's now evolved into a whole gender war online. Now, of course, men and women, I have to add, have come back, and it's obviously transpired with the whole hashtag not all men in defense of men. And it's got to a stage now where Parliament are now considering a curfew for all men after 6 o'clock, apparently in an effort to reduce violence. So what are my thoughts on this? Where do I stand with this? Well, there's two things. The first thing is that this event, and not just this event, but others, which I'll talk about in a second, it just confirms why unconscious bias exists. And I did a video on this in regards to an event that took place. But number two, it also shows me why we also need to be extremely careful about what path we want our society to go down. As if it does transpire that this bill of a curfew will take place or go through, it will just set dangerous new precedents. So to point number one, and again, I did a video on this in which I'll link at the end, talking about the Manchester bombing incident. And I said during this whole situation that the reason why it happened is because the security guard, and he said it out of his own mouth, he was afraid to search the perpetrator because of the stigma it would cause. But I argued that what it was actually because of his or our innate survival instinct, which people nowadays are calling unconscious bias, that would have caused him to want to search that person. And it's the same thing if we want to relate it now to the situation, what's happened when I heard the women talk about their stories. Because, yes, it is complete BS to label all men this way. And that's why I also agree with the not all men hashtag. That's why I agree with when the men spoke back, and women again, about the backlash. Because what didn't take place was the nuances. I heard some people tweet out the nuances, but in reality, it was a case of a gender war, all men are this, all men are that, all men are this, all men are that. But the nuances of the conversation, which wasn't really displayed during the whole gender wars, was that, listen, women are likely to be more afraid of men due to their survival instinct, because men are bigger on average, men are stronger. I don't care what anyone says. This just proves the BS about feminism, about how men and women are equal. This kind of stuff just proves that crap. Because let's be honest, we all know the average woman cannot contend with the average man. That's why women are more afraid, especially at certain settings. In the case of it's at night, because of your innate survival instinct, you just want to get home safe and sound like any other human being would. Makes complete sense. Just like when I talk about with the Manchester bomber in that example. Because here's the thing in regards to not all men. And again, 100% agreed with that. But here's the problem. It only takes one time in your life where you let your instinct down. Because again, we all believe in not everyone should be stereotyped. But what does our unconscious bias, what does our survival instinct tell us? It doesn't matter. Get home for the night and then worry about all the inconsequentials about who you stereotyped, about who you racially profiled another time. Because it only takes one incident, one time, when you let your guard down for a horrible tragedy to take place. And in the event of the Manchester bomber, it took place where it affected so many people's lives. It takes the lives of so many innocents. You can already go back into history with other events that took place. The 9/11 bombing, the July 7 bombing. All it takes is one time for you to slip under that rug, for events like that to take place, and it completely changes people's life for the worst. And that's why I can totally empathize when I was looking at the women's stories about other kind of things. Again, I don't agree with the whole gender war. I think there should be nuances in the conversation. There's no way there you can target a whole gender of men to do this, because we know in the main, men aren't like this. We know this. And this is also something which I want to say, because this is what women don't seem to appreciate about this whole conversation. Us men also get afraid as well when walking home by ourselves at certain times of the night, especially in certain areas. Murders statistically are more felt against men than women. But here's the difference. It doesn't get the same attention in the press due to, let's be honest, the complete disregard for men's lives. Because just because a man takes another man's life, it doesn't automatically somehow invalidate the situation. Oh, but it's another man taking that guy's life, therefore it shouldn't get any news praise. I'm like, hold on a second. No, we're talking about innocent people, whether it's a man or a woman. But that's not what gets put in the press. It doesn't get, the narrative isn't played that way. So what happens? We're in this gender war situation now, as opposed to saying, no, Evil people, regardless of their gender, have committed an atrocity against an evil human being. So that's why sometimes when all this gender war comes across and all this kind of stuff, it's just like, man, men's lives will never get this kind of regard in the same way, in this respect. Even though, again, it shouldn't even be a situation that we should be even talking about in terms of a gender war, but this is where we're at with things. But that's the first point. So the second point, now this is where a lot of black people, they lost me with, because this is why a lot of black people seem to have an inability to connect the dots, because I saw black men and women all co-signing the fact that, all men should be viewed as guilty, and if you say that you aren't the problem, then that actually means you are the problem. And I had to step back and laugh, because these are the same people now who will complain when police overwhelmingly target black men for stop and search, for knives and guns. And I'm like, aren't you the same person who says that just because some black people commit crime doesn't mean all black people and all black men should be viewed as criminals and stereotyped and stopped and treated like they're criminals without, just because they may wear a certain item of clothing, because they may have a snapback on their head, whatever the situation may be. Yeah, I'm like, can you not see the connection between what you're saying about men and the curfew, the hateful vitriol on men, and how if you let this law to be passed, what is the logical step that's going to take place next? We all know what they're going to do next. They're going to say this, well, hold on a second. If we've got this curfew on men regarding this, then when it comes to stop and search in the light of day, guess what? That's right. We should be targeting black men, because you know what? We find statistically black men overwhelmingly, when it comes to knife crime, gun crimes, and certain drug offences, black people are the stereotypically, they're overwhelmingly statistically the ones who can be carrying out these acts. Therefore, in order to protect black lives is how they will frame it. Because you know how the Brits do with they got a great PR system. In order to frame it in a way that will protect black lives, guess what they'll do? They'll say, continue with discriminatory stop and search laws, continue over discriminating when it comes to black people in certain arrests, continue when it comes to the law situation. And all this is because, again, if you agree with that logical step of unconscious bias that you have to actually forcibly do something, then here it is. This is what's going to happen. And again, it won't just stop there. Other situations for other scenarios that would affect other races, other groups, women, men, children, nothing will be out of bounds. And people often talk about the UK being a police state with conversations like this, because it's currently being discussed in the Houses of Parliament. If it gets passed, what will the landscape be in the next 5 to 10 years? I wouldn't even be surprised. And this is why I said at the start of this video, if this was any other period of time, I would actually be surprised, because I'm like, what is going on here? But at this time, in this day and age, I am not surprised. And you know what kills me the most? I actually blame a lot of you people for this kind of crap, because this is what happens when you have the wokeness on steroids. Everything's woke. Everyone's something to blame about something. No one takes responsibility. So guess what we have right now? We're going to have the situation that we have now when it comes to lockdown. We already have lockdowns already for a virus which has apparently a 90-odd% recovery rate. So don't think the government won't use the power when it comes to this other BS, because everything's racist, everything's sexist, everything's xenophobic, everything's this, everything's that, everything. It won't stop there. And this is all because a lot of people are too soft to handle a difference of an opinion. Now, this is completely different because this is actual crime that was committed. But this is how the steps taking place. It will go from an actual crime being committed to someone just saying something that they disagree with, and that's going to be viewed in the exact same light because you guys are too soft. We need to stand up for this kind of stuff, because if it goes in the same way I believe it's going to go down, we all are going to be in trouble. So that's all I have for today. That's what I wanted to speak about on this video. These are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Until next time, I'm out.